Vegas Little Radio, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Jay Fierce Rodriguez stepping into the studio for this afternoon hour. Of course, giving DJ Garth Baker kind of like a lunch break, I guess. And I was telling him this is pretty funny. He's like the first radio DJ I've ever heard of get a lunch break. So anyways, he'll be back on the air here coming up at about 1 o'clock this afternoon. In the meantime, right now, we have the North Lyon County Fire Protection District in the studio. We have Bill Snyder joining us. Hello, Bill.
Hello.
And we also have Steve, right?
Yes, sir. Steve Kuntz.
Steve Kuntz joining us. And what do you guys do with the fire department?
I'm a firefighter, EMT advanced.
I'm a firefighter paramedic. I've been there for 7 years, and we both live in the community of Fernley.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us and taking some time out of your day to be here to talk about the North Lyon County Fire Protection District tax question. So if you can't share with us, what is this question about?
This question's about increasing our daily staffing, probably by at least one guy. We're going to try to hire 2 off of what this is, off the current populace, and that'd be 2 total. And if that revenue increases with more building, then we can start to add on more guys. But we'd like to try to staff a 3rd rig. Right now we have 2 currently staffed, and we're just simply not able to cover our existing call volume.
Okay, and so this tax question is going to help with making this a possibility, a reality, or?
Yeah, we're asking for 5 cents on every $100 of your assessed value, and the assessed value is about 33% of what the market value is roughly. So we have some charts floating out there on Facebook, and we have a website, keepfernleysafe.com, and we've been hanging door flyers. And that chart breaks it down to kind of gives you an idea. If you own a home that's worth about $100, it shows you what the monthly and yearly cost would be, and it goes all the way to about a $300,000 house, and it breaks it down to a monthly cost and a yearly cost. And the monthly cost for a $300,000 house is about $4.37 additional a month. So that's what that ballot measure would do, would add on another 5 cents.
Okay, and you said you're this is because of a shortage of staff, and you have 3 vehicles you would like to have used, right?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't it be something that volunteers could use, and can you share with us as to why you wouldn't be able to staff it with volunteers, or would you?
We'll always rely on volunteers. Volunteers play a huge role for our department. They help us out, support staff-wise, and we also get initial response from a few of volunteers for 911 calls. Ideally, that would be an ideal situation to have volunteers available 24/7 that could assist in the first response initial attack of 911 calls. Unfortunately, our volunteers have jobs,
right,
and so
okay.
yeah, they're busy, and so it's sporadic. We can't dictate when there's going to be a 911 call, so we can't guarantee a number of response. So basically, we have challenges we're trying to meet to support the needs of the community with our 911 call volume. So the biggest challenge right now is we don't have enough daily staffing to meet the current 911 call volume, including full-time staff and volunteers.
Can you share with the listeners as to some examples as to how this is affecting the North Lyon County Fire Protection District?
Well, yeah, basically every day. Like I said, we can't dictate when 911 calls occur. But when they do, sometimes they occur multiple calls at once, which puts a strain on our system and requires all of our full-time staff to be absorbed into those calls. What we're worried about is those additional calls after that where we don't have personnel available to staff those calls.
So you guys could be on a call, and then all of a sudden here comes another one, and
Absolutely.
then here comes another one, and then
it happens almost every day.
So when that does happen, who steps in to help, or is there any help?
We do. We have mutual aid agreements with surrounding agencies. Central Lyon Fire, they respond from Stagecoach, Banner Churchill Ambulance, which is in Fallon. Then we also have resources from Washoe County that we can use, such as REMSA, Truckee Meadows fire, Reno fire, Sparks
But of course,
fire.
that also takes time.
It's
right?
time.
Yeah.
It's distance. We're kind of an island in the oasis out here that time is critical, especially on a lot of the emergencies we respond on. We need to get there within a certain time, not only for medical but fire calls and also motor vehicle accidents.
Okay. And you have a question, Robert?
Yeah, yesterday was a perfect example of what you're talking about. Talking to Chief Scott Huntley last night, the fire at Pilot at Wendy's yesterday, and at the same time that you guys were on that call, Central Lyon had a call, and so if there had been a second call at the same time, they would not have been able to respond. Is what he was explaining.
Right.
And that fire in Central is actually just outside of our boundary, so that was almost our responsibility to cover that, and it happened maybe 10 minutes before the Wendy's. So we would have been headed that direction when the Wendy's thing would have happened. And to kind of elaborate on what Steve's saying, this happens. It's not, if it happens every day, multiple times a day. If you look at a year span of time, whether it's 2015 or 2014 or any year in particular, even from January till now, we're averaging 2 to 3 times a day. We have to ask outside entities from Fallon, Central Line, Reno to come in to help. And in any direction, Fallon's probably the closest. They're about 30 miles. Stagecoach is probably about 25, 30, somewhere in there, miles. And then Reno's obviously 30, 35 miles. So we are truly an island. We're not like Reno and Sparks where we just have another unit come.
And this actually will bring me to the next question here, which actually comes from our website, bigsoutaradio.com. And for those of you who are listening right now who would like to ask questions, you can online on our website. We have a chat box, and you can remain anonymous. You can sign up real quick and easy, bigsoutaradio.com. Or you can call the studio here as well, 775-404-1115. So Katie is asking about how many calls do you get per month, and where does the Fernley Fire Department cover?
So we're doing right around close to 300 a month calls. And like Steve said, they're sporadic. Sometimes they're 3 or 4 or 5 in a row. I mean, the day before, we had 7 calls within 2 hours. So they can stack up like that, and we've had 2 agencies the day before yesterday and at the same time while we were all both committed. Yesterday, kind of the same thing. And our area of coverage is the City of Fernley's boundaries. We're only responsible for the City of Fernley, and if you look at a map, City of Fernley is actually pretty big. It has a lot of desert.
Right.
So we go all the way out to Damien's Curve, that big curve on 95A going towards Silver Springs. Mm-hmm. That's our boundary, that south. We go out to about mile marker 63, going east down 80. And then we go about to the county line just above the Wadsworth Bridge. And then
Hazen on Highway 50. And
then Hazen on Highway 50 is that boundary on that end. So it's actually a pretty large area. So if you wreck your car, or you're out in the mountains and wreck your quad, it's a pretty geographic area. It's a pretty large area, but the citizens of Fernley are the only folks that pay for us. It's not people in Silver Springs or rest of Yerington or anywhere else.
So you're not getting state funding or extra funding anywhere from at all?
There is a little, like a sliver of that C-tax that does come to us, and it's literally
but you're literally like
10 or 20,000 bucks.
What we were discussing with Kelly Bry yesterday, it's like holding a bag and just say, okay, can you go ahead and shake out your change so we can get a little bit of this, right?
Our primary budget is from property taxes from the residents of Fernley. So, and then we're governed. We're not part of the City of Fernley. We're not part of Lyon County either. Our title's kind of is a misconception, but we are a fire district under NRS 474. That's how we're structured and governed. And the folks that are your fire board or fire commissioners, they're elected every election cycle. They have different,
backgrounds and
different backgrounds, and they bring a lot of stuff to the table. But every year there's somebody on the ballot for that board, and they have to be a Fernley resident. So we don't have people from Yerington or Silver Springs on our fire board. There's 5 elected people on there from Fernley that are governing our budget. And that's a good thing and that's a bad thing. I mean, people have asked, why aren't you a part of the city? And, they can take money out of wherever and give it to you.
Right.
There's pros and cons to that. I personally like the fire district model because Our monies can't get moved. If you're paying money for public safety, for fire and EMS, it comes to us, and we can put it in staffing or fire trucks or volunteers or whatever we need to make the wheels turn. Versus, to give you an example, the city of Reno is laying off 64 firemen. They bought $1 million roof for a pool, and they bought 12 or 13 lawnmowers, and then they were going to put the rest of the money in the rainy day fund. So there's no sacrificing public safety here. Our money can't be moved to the water treatment plant or roads or anything else, because the city, they're having a rough time as well. So our monies can't get moved from the fire department to some other entity to cover some other shortfall. And we're pretty short ourselves as far as staffing. We should have probably about 15 guys on a day every day. And we have 4.
Right
You have how many? 4?
4. We have about 12 to 15 volunteers, and out of that group, we have 3 or 4 that actually will respond. They're pretty consistent. We got a guy that's gone 3/4 of the month, but when he's in town, he's always here. And we have some other folks that just haven't gotten the training yet, but they're very reliable. They're good hands. So kind of touching back onto what Steve was answering with the volunteer question, this ballot measure will not eliminate volunteers. It's not the beginning of the end of the volunteers. It's just changing the role from having to require, call on. If you guys are our volunteers, we're saying right now, drop what you're doing. We have a baby not breathing, So what we're doing is trying to establish at least that first response or that initial response guaranteed by folks that are paid to be here because they're busy, and then that manpower to come in behind them. So for a residential structure fire, if your bedroom was on fire, a couple of rooms are on fire, it takes 15 guys to do that whole operation.
Wow.
So
A minimum.
yeah, and the national standards say they want 15 guys there in under 8 minutes because of fire growth and structural integrity of the building and all these different variables. So let's just say we added 11 more guys on a day. Let's just throw that out there, and that the taxpayer said we want 11 more guys a day, which will never happen. But if that happened, we would still have to have a volunteer component. We'd still have to, because if we have a structure fire and we had all 15 guys there, guarantee you there's going to be a car accident somewhere. I guarantee you somebody's going to be having a heart attack.
There's going to be another call. Yeah.
There's going to be another call, just like there are every day right now. And we're still going to have to use that volunteer component to augment our staffing, because we are an island and we are a rural community. So as long as I'm around, and I've been with this fire department for going into 12 years.
Thank you.
We're gonna still need volunteers for the rest of my career and probably further out from that. So this by no means is any way to push volunteers out. I actually think it'll probably strengthen our volunteer force, because it'll be less demand on them every day, and we could put more focus into
because they're worried. They're like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, just there's so much need
Yeah.
right now that I'm kind of scared, because I have to work. I have to try to have a living at the same time, and then also participate and volunteer. Fernley Amber asked question: how do you prioritize medical versus fire calls?
Basically, when the 911 call comes in, we go. In our system, we only have 4 guys on a day, so we staff 2 ambulances mainly,
Okay.
and then if there's a fire call, we'll get off that ambulance and get on the fire truck. So depending on if that call comes in, right now you're having I don't know, you're ill for some reason, and we're going to send you an ambulance with 2 guys on it. Now,
Okay.
if there's a fire that comes in 5 minutes later, a minute later, the other 2 guys will get on a fire truck. They'll go to that call. Now, let's say the first call is like somebody burning in their yard or something. It's just like a smoke check or something that's not emergent, but just needs, hey, we gotta go out there and make sure.
Okay, something's burning in the yard, not someone is
Yeah.
burning in their yard.
No,
Okay.
but something that's
Right.
maybe not life-threatening or threatening property.
Mhm.
It's just something, somebody needs some help with something, because we get all kinds of calls, It's,
Right.
And we have a medical call or a car accident or something that sounds more serious. We can divert and go to the more serious call, but
We do a triage.
we do
basically.
a triage, basically.
Our number one priority for this community will always be life safety. And so we do have to make a judgment call sometimes and determine what call has the higher priority in life safety. Of course, there are life safety issues in fire. There could be possibly a rescue, and we would need to get there fast to be able to help pull someone out of a burning building. Or do you go to someone that's unconscious and unresponsive prior to the fire? with information knowing that there are no people trapped in the fire, we would choose the life safety always, because we don't have that luxury all the time to where we have that additional staffing at the station. We could have that other crew on their way back or on their way to transporting a patient from a previous call with only 2 guys covering the entire district. So when a fire call and an EMS call get called out at once, they do have to make a very critical decision. We're asking for help from our neighbors right away. We're asking for help from our volunteers. We're hoping they're listening to what's going on in the district, and we've been lucky so far.
Because some jobs, I'm sure, knowing that they have a fire department volunteer, would be lenient to be like, you know what, go. We know they need you right now, so just go, and it's okay, right?
In town, most of our volunteers though work either
outside,
in Reno, outside of the area. So.
And what's really scary is when you have to have just 2 on crew here in the district while someone is just finishing up transporting someone to Reno. The drive, that's going to take quite a bit of time. So this is definitely understanding as to why we need this tax increase to be voted yes on. So that way it'll help make sure that, okay, well, hey, someone went to Reno, they're coming back, but we still have 2 crews out here in Fernley, which is good, and this is what we need because, it's protection and helpful, very helpful. So
the kind of touching on what you're talking about with time. Each one of those times we go to Reno, they're about a 2.5-hour round trip from the time we get called to we're going to your house. We're doing our magic, and we load you up, and we take you into Reno, and we drop you off and come back. It's about 2.5 hours round trip.
Wow.
So with our current call volume and fires and everything we go to, we spend about 16 plus hours a day on 911 calls that we're committed to. So there's multiple times a day, there's just blocks of uncovered time.
The calls overlap.
And they overlap those times.
So we have another question. Are there duties that full firemen can perform that volunteers can't?
Yeah, so we have different levels of training, right? So Steve here is a paramedic. Volunteers, we don't have any that are paramedics. So Steve can give 50, 60 drugs, from anything from starting your heart to stopping your heart to making you breathe faster, slower. We got all kinds of medicine to help. We could do. We're pretty.
That's not to say if we didn't have a volunteer paramedic that they couldn't function as a paramedic. Yeah. Also, I'm also do the volunteer coordinating for the department, and have had a chance to kind of direct our program in the path it's going in right now. And my idea behind it was to develop volunteer firefighters that could function the same as our line staff, as our full-time staff. And so we don't require the same level of training to be a full-time firefighter. But if you have those, that's awesome, because that helps your town out, the city, the citizens, things like that. And we want you to be able to function and contribute whatever you can. But we have people that just want to drive, and we'll find you a spot doing that. So there's different levels, but if you have the level of training and certificates that correlate to the need, then volunteer firefighters can function at the same level as paid staff.
Okay.
And we hold a high standard for that. We would like for volunteers to pursue additional training, certificates, degrees that can help the department and the community. And we do have people doing that, and it's awesome.
Good.
When they're on scene and they help us. And going back to sending 2 guys down on an ambulance to a call. Well, on a critical call, we might have a driver plus 2 people in the back, so that's 3 people. And so a lot of the times when we get that additional volunteer response, we can have that person drive that critical patient in, because the more hands in the back of the ambulance with this very sick person, the better for that person.
Yeah, and it's more needed. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of that going on too, where we have to get creative with the resources we have, but it also decreases the resources left behind here to keep the service there, so that if there is another emergency, we're available in a timely manner.
Okay. Robert, you have another question?
Yeah, when you guys were talking about your mutual aid agreements with other agencies coming in to help, well, what kind of requirements are there for you guys to reciprocate to go out to those other districts for the mutual aid for them?
So our agreements are basically when we're available. They're reciprocal. So when we call, we need help. If they have the resources available, they'll send them. Same thing with them. If they call and we have the resources available, we'll send them. And it sucks because maybe we're going to a fire in Reno or something, and we just dropped, because we won't send the whole crew. We'll send 2 guys, or maybe send 1. Sometimes they just want a truck.
Unless you have
one
more
guy.
volunteers who
we
are
can get
available,
volunteers.
then you can. Yeah.
And we do that too. So what we'll do sometimes, if we have volunteers available, we'll see if they're available, and we'll send maybe a volunteer or 2. Or like we had a fire in Douglas County just a month ago. We put 1 full-time guy on a structure engine, and we put 3 volunteers with him. And then we had 1 volunteer come in and backfill with paramedics. So we maintained our normal staffing for the city, and we were able to send those guys some help that they were asking for. So we kind of moved the puzzle pieces around to make them work. If we're not available, we get asked every day to go into Fallon or into Reno or into Central Line down in Silver Spring, Stagecoach, Dayton, that area. We get asked, and we tell them almost every day, no, we can't. Sorry, because we're too busy up here. Because we don't have. If we have 1 unit out of town, we don't. And they ask, "Hey man, we can't go. We have to."
So let's say you're on a
normally
call
staff.
outside, and you're having an outside call to support. What's the wait time if, let's say, just it's a very emergency an urgent or emergency call that you kind of have almost the entire crew or something like that, and you don't have much coverage here? What's the wait time, or what would be the wait time if you had to exhaust all your resources for something like that?
For a call in Fernley,
No, for a call outside, for outside support.
it depends on location. Central Lyon, we go down there quite a bit to help them when they get busy, and their district is more lengthwise than it is, I guess
North
more,
and south, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
From
the
Silver
ratio.
Springs to Mound House is Central Line. Yeah.
So it could take a while. They had the issue with us providing mutual aid to other agencies also is a lot of those agencies have closer other agencies they respond to their calls. Central Line has Carson City, East Fork, which is Douglas County, and Story County. Fallon, they have a Naval Air Station base that has full-time paid firefighters as well as provide ambulance services.
I could be wrong, I believe there's 18 professional firefighter EMTs and paramedics on the base.
Wow.
And they
So
come
they're
off
pretty
base
heavy.
quite a bit. And then Washoe County, there's 3 or 4 fire agencies there, as well as REMSA, that share responsibilities for calls. So, depending if we're going to Fallon, if it's on the east end of Fallon, we can get there in probably 15 to 20 minutes. But if it's on the far end of Fallon, 30 to 35 minutes. Same thing with Central Line District.
And we usually have a good idea so if we're going to try to plug in a volunteer into that group or that team that goes out, we already have a good idea of who's available in town and who's not.
Okay, good.
So
good.
it's not like we're like, oh, they called us, give me 10 minutes while I try to figure out if I have a crew available. I'm pretty much send out a text, and within a minute I know if they're coming or not, and then we can send that group out. But we try to maintain our staffing here in the city because that's our first priority or responsibility. But we, if you look at how often they come to us, they come 2, 3, sometimes 6 times a day, every day. So on average, about 2 or 3 times a day. And we reciprocate that with maybe 2, 3 times a week. So it's a huge disparity on the give and take.
Yeah.
And eventually, you're going to have places like Central Line or Story County. They're going to say, hey, man, we're too busy. We can't send you stuff anymore because you're putting too much of a strain into our system, and our taxpayers pay for these resources to be here. They can't be in Fernley 2, 3 times a day every day.
Right.
So that's kind of one of them fears that's sitting out there down the road is eventually those guys are going to say, hey, man, you're overtaxing us.
So we know what will come about if the voters vote yes on this question, and what you guys are, looking to fulfill, should you get a yes vote and everyone supports it and everything happens just the way we're keeping our fingers crossed for. What's the fire department looking to do, or what's plan B if you get a no vote and it doesn't pass?
We're working with the other entities, so with the county and the city, because they are separate entities. You guys saw the thing that the city put on the ballot, and part of that was like, hey, can we put some money aside for public safety? So if our taxing fails and their advisory question passes, they would have some flexibility down the road to try to move some money to essentially like subcontract us, move some money to.
But that's in the long run. What's going to happen in the short term? We're
just going to keep doing what we do and try to. we constantly
that property values increase enough to where we can add additional staffing. Our ambulance money that's generated that we bill for services, we hope to increase our return on those rates. And I think we'll continue to heavily recruit volunteers and train them so that we can rely on them. But I think who has the biggest responsibility coming up over the next couple years will be our elected officials that govern our fire department, and that's going to be our board members. And so I think they'll have some challenges to face, and possibly looking at different staffing models and getting creative with what we got. I think we're running at a bare minimum right now that puts a lot of people at risk. It puts ourselves at risk, our firefighters, but our number one priority is the community. We see it daily, and we have family and friends that live in this town, and so we know when there is no coverage in this town, and we might be driving back from a call through the canyon and hear some radio traffic that there's another call, and I always get that sinking feeling like, could that be my family? Or there's a car accident, my wife drives that road, or it affects us all, and we're just hoping that the community here, the citizens here, see that the money would go to good use and increase the staffing so that there's someone there to respond when a 911 call occurs.
Josh?
I know you've kind of touched on this, but you guys are talking about how many calls you're out on and the help that you get from other counties. Realistically, how often is there zero coverage here where everybody's busy? Because I think that's an important topic. If we have situations where there is no ability to get help from someone else and you guys are already on calls, that's definitely when you put someone's life at risk.
Yeah. That's a good question. I would say probably 3-4 times a week that people are saying, hey, we can't come at this point. When we get something cut loose, we'll send it. Yesterday was an example. Wendy's, we had nobody that can come in. The day before that was another example. Literally, we had nobody available to come in because we had, I think, Banner ambulance was sent on a call, Central or somebody came in, but no one else was available because everybody else was tied up. So I'd say 3 or 4 times a week that there's simply our mutual aid partners are not even able to send us anything. So
that's crazy. That's
so.
I was thinking maybe 3 or 4 times a month, but 3 or 4 times a week. That's wow.
3 or 4 times a week. There's just no coverage.
There's no. I mean, they'll go down a list. They'll call Reno and Washoe County and Rimza. They'll call everybody, and they'll just keep going down the list. And when nobody's available, I remember a month and a half ago or so, we were even thinking, do we call Incline Village? Do we have them come in? But we couldn't, because by the time they even get halfway here, we'll be back from Reno. So part of that is we have to make that judgment call of, all right, we'll just respond from, Mustang or Patrick or wherever we're at. We just let our dispatch know, hey, we're going to be available, but it's going to be a really extended time for us to get into where we're going.
That's crazy.
Can you, do you know a generalized time of how long those windows last where there's no coverage?
What, 30 minutes, an hour, something in that ballpark?
Yeah, I would say 20 to 30 minutes.
20 to 30 minutes.
Typically, An ideal situation, we would have another unit on returning back to the town. It's hard to pinpoint those exact numbers, but we've all been there responding from Reno, and it's hard because our radio communication with dispatch, who is out of Urington, we have our repeater network set up, but we're going through the canyon, and you hear scratchiness. You might hear our tones because we have distinct tones for all the districts in Lyon County, and so we're usually on the phone calling them, hey, what's going on in Fernley? Is there another call? Is there coverage? And we don't know. And so, and there's those times, yep, there's a call at this address, it's this certain medical or car accident or whatever, and okay, we're responding from USA Parkway. That's typically the area. USA Parkway, Mustang is when we're on the phone saying, is there anyone there?
So one more quick thing. As far as you guys can remember, what's the longest window that there's been with no coverage?
Oh, that's, like I said, I've been around for 12 years and run thousands of calls a year. I don't know. Back in the older days, and prior to 2010, we had a private ambulance here, and it was Banner out of Fallon. And then the fire department, we were only stuck on the fire engine. We weren't allowed to take people in an ambulance, but we were qualified. We had the training. So you have 2 guys on a fire engine, you have 2 guys on an ambulance, and we were split, and we were totally separate entities. And we'd wait an hour and a half for folks because the ambulance would just leave, and then we'd bounce to the next call and sit there with that person until somebody could clear up. Things are much better than that system, because we get that question all the time, like, why don't you just get away from the ambulance business and into just the fire? Well, the problem with that is if you go into the private entity, they're for profit. Even if they say they're not for profit, they don't do it for free. They're not doing it out of the kindness of the heart. And they're going to put 1 ambulance here. They're not going to put 2. So now you're down 1 ambulance instead of 2 ambulances. Then we would drop down to just 2 firemen on a day. And those 2 guys that used to be firemen that were on the ambulance would be on the ambulance, and they can't do fire. So right now, you literally cut our staffing in half of what it is now. From 2000, in the beginning of the recession in 2008 till now, we've gone up over 700 additional calls. So, things.
And we're not getting smaller in
Yeah,
Fernley. We're growing.
We've been heading in the right direction.
Which is good, yeah.
Yeah,
that
the
part,
fire
right.
district acquired the ambulance service in Fernley during the recession. And from that day on, it has seen growth it's been headed down the right direction. We're doing good on our ambulance money that's generated. We're not too much in a deficit that way. We're at 30 cents for our tax rate, which is the lowest in Lyon County, and I think that's what is overall dictating the overall services we can provide for the city.
Did I answer your question? I would say currently within the last, let's say 5 years, because it's hard to really I would say 40 minutes with nobody there, would probably be the longest stretch. That's still a long time.
That's still pretty long.
Time
yeah.
is
That's time for
tissue.
someone to die.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
time is tissue.
Oh, yeah.
Your heart isn't getting the oxygen into it.
Right.
It's
Robert, one last
yeah.
question. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Robert.
Can you talk about equipment-wise? You've been talking about personnel and
Yeah.
coverage, but I know a year or so ago you guys bought a fire engine from Las Vegas, and that was like a 10 or 15-year-old fire engine. But talk about a little bit about the equipment you guys have and what your needs are and how what kind of shape is the equipment that
Yeah.
you do have.
Our fleet's not bad. We got a lot of old stuff. I would say, we have 14 pieces of equipment in our fleet, and probably 10, 11 of those are donations from other departments or rehabbed vehicles from other departments. So we've been pretty creative. We've stretched that dollar out. I actually worked on that deal with the City of Las Vegas. I got those 2 things donated for $10 a piece. And each one, to put that in perspective, each one of those fire engines is about $460,000 a piece. And that's with no hose, that's with no equipment, that's just the truck.
Now they're our first out.
They're our first out. They're 98s. Yeah, they're a little older. Thankfully, some of the folks I knew down there, the connections I had, we were able to get the low mileage, low used engines. So we got a screaming deal. we did buy a brand new brush truck, 8 months ago or something.
And a brand new ambulance.
And those monies were paid for by us sending trucks out to wildfires because we bill out for the manpower. Now, to kind of touch on that whole subject is we don't send anything out unless we guarantee that we can backfill our stations with the minimum staffing or normal.
Right.
The fire pays for that overtime from the fire. Then they pay a fee, basically a rate for the guys going out, so they cover their costs and overtime. And then they pay a fee for the truck as well. So the department actually makes money off the deal. So we took that money we made and bought a brand new fire truck in cash. No bonds, no lines of credit or nothing. It was just, here's the money in cash. We did that with our ambulance. We put a new roof on the station with that money. We paved that parking lot with that money. So by us going out of district on these wildfires, we've actually generated revenue to bring back to the community. And we still have some creative plans to stretch our fleet out and try to do that. But our fleet's really not the issue. Like, we've done a really good job of making them more modern of what we have. We simply need manpower. You could have all the trucks, and we could buy all brand new trucks tomorrow. But if there's nobody to move those trucks to get to, bring the toolbox to get to,
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure you already answered this question. I'm pretty sure, but our last question on the chat box here is: would an additional private ambulance service help or hurt Fernley?
It would help. Let's just say RIMSA or the city or the fire district said, let's see if RIMSA, reach out to RIMSA or Banner, if they can put an ambulance here on top of our normal ambulance and fire staffing.
Adding more as opposed to splitting.
But going back to that for-profit issue, there's not enough rep because their whole model is to keep the wheels turning. So they're not. Nothing is RIMSA. RIMSA a really good service. I don't want to seem like I'm putting their service down or anything, but when you, for an example, City of Reno or Washoe County has 7 to 15 ambulances on covering 500,000 people. We have 2 ambulances covering 20,000 people. And that ambulance, that fluctuates based off of a computer telling you during this time of day there's usually less calls, so we're going to have less people out on the streets covering them. So the RIMSA guys are super busy. They got really good medics, they got good supervisors, they got good people working for them. It's just, that system, they're not going to put an ambulance out here and then not make a profit margin. If they're breaking even or barely covering costs, they're not going to do it.
Or if it's costing them money, they're like, forget
now,
let's not do
if there was that kind of revenue out there for them to have an ambulance here and be able to at least break even, we wouldn't have this discussion really. We just put on another ambulance and then we just pick up that revenue. We just keep it all within our community. The other issue with having a private ambulance covering in, we're a government entity. If we don't follow, like, we're short, but we're always going to be there. This system will always be here. When we had Banner here in 2010, some things fell apart, and they basically said, hey, man, we're no longer business in Fernley. And the state law under the NRS 474 for the fire district, it specifically says that the fire departments or fire districts are ultimately responsible for providing fire EMS everything, right? So when they say, hey, we're not making a profit out there anymore, and we pack our bags and leave, literally the employees came to work and their supervisor said, hey, we're no longer in business out here, and we had no ambulance. So the fire chief, we had no paramedics, we had no ambulances. The fire chief at the time had to call Central Lyon and say, hey, this is what just happened, I don't know what to do. And he said, we'll send an ambulance up. And they brought guys on overtime and basically backfilled us. And we did that for 8 months. We did this transition to where we eventually took over, because the private ambulance said, hey, we can no longer do it, whatever their circumstances were. With the fire departments or fire districts or whatever, whether we're city or county or whatever the fire district is organized, they can't give up, they can't bail out, they can't say, hey, you're on your own. Well, we're going to be here. So the staffing model might change, but there's going to be something. Plus, we have that volunteer component that we can plug in. I'd say multiple times a week we plug in a volunteer to drive the ambulance while we try to drop one of the full-time guys back. So we are moving the puzzle pieces around to try to stretch our ability to cover the city as best we can. It's only getting busier, and
I think a lot of people don't understand that we have an enterprise fund that's money generated from the ambulance services we provide. We bill insurances, and that pays for more than half of our full-time staff. So any loss or deduction from that budget could result in decreasing staffing. So in my opinion, introducing another private ambulance to run calls here could potentially take away from that fund that creates jobs for our firefighters in the city. So,
and the other benefit to have the fire department doing the EMS and the transport is there's a continuity in care. If you plug your car into the canal and you drown, we're going to come get you because we're the fire department. We do rescue, we do fire, we can extricate you from a car. When we get you out of that car, it's going to be the same guys working on you, the same paramedics. When they take you to the hospital, it's when they put you into the trauma room or you're talking to the doctor, it's the same paramedics that got you out as when they deliver you to the doctor. And that's for any call, whether it's a structure fire and we pull somebody out and they're not breathing anymore because of smoke, a car accident, a hazmat call, somebody in the canal. It doesn't matter if, so. And then plus, if you're on a car accident, I could take any of my guys and say, hey, I need you to get on the ambulance or get on that fire truck and go handle that call. Because we're all cross-trained. Now, if we're separate and you have a private ambulance, they're not allowed to do fire stuff or extricate or do those things. So I've literally, when we had the private ambulance, I could tell you war story after war story. We're not going to do that because we're way out of time. But, on the interstate where there's 4 of us there's 2 guys on a private ambulance, there's 2 of us from on the fire engine. We're we could do their stuff, we can't transport, and we're cutting cars apart, getting people out of these cars. And the guys that are on the private ambulance, they couldn't even help us. They couldn't move our stuff or help cut cars. So you have 2 bodies that are just standing there waiting for us to get the people out of the car when we could have 4 guys doing that.
Right.
So it's a long topic. We could talk for hours about that specific thing, but
all in all, this is exactly why we're doing this, and is to bring some informative and helpful information to those who may have not voted already as to why this is an important question on the ballot and why it's important to get that support from our community. So without further ado, we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hope the voters will vote yes on your tax question and support the fire department and get us some more staffing.
Yeah, and if anyone has any other questions, you can always come down to the fire station. You can ask us, you can ask the chief, you can ask the volunteers. Also, visit keepfernleysafe.com. There's a lot of good information. It's all statistic. The district's not trying to hide anything. The people who form Keep Fernley Safe aren't trying to hide anything. They're just trying to get information out to the public so that they understand the situation the fire district's in. And, hopefully they'll... they basically dictate the services provided here. So 5 cents is what is on the ballot, and you can see how that's broken down, but also you can see more on details on the operations that go on daily within the fire district.
So that's keepfernleysafe.com.
keepfernleysafe.com.
Well, thank you guys for coming in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Bill and Steve, we definitely thank you for your services as well here.
You're welcome.
And helping to keep our community safe. We'll also want to say thank you to Robert from the Fernley Reporter for sponsoring this portion of the segment. And we thank you, Robert, for that. That's fernleyreporter.com. It's Jay Fierce Rodriguez with Biggest Little Radio. All right, so today's Throwback Thursday. We'll have some throwbacks to play for you guys for the next hour and 15 minutes. And, of course, DJ Garth Baker stepping back in the studio here in about 15 minutes as well. So, again, keepfernleysafe.com, keepfernleysafe.com, and get out and vote. Thank you.